Welcome to Divisionalysis, I'm Fog. How many times have you heard the best defense is a good offense? Well, let's test the theory. Let's go. So in the last video I introduced the pillars of effectiveness: damage, frequency, and duration. These are broken down even further, with damage being amplified by damage multipliers. Your duration is set by the time that you have to fire your magazine, but it's also limited by your armor and damage mitigation. Replenishment, or your frequency of being able to do damage, is limited by your reload time, and then also after you've taken damage, how quickly you can get back out in order to do damage. Now, the old adage that offense is the best defense and killing things quicker in this game is your best defense, let's put that to the test.
Immediate medical assistance needed. Agent down. Serious trauma detected. Agent out of action. Agent killed. Vital signs critical. Agent down.
I don't care how fast you can kill things or how fast you think you can kill things. Killing things quicker is a really crappy defense. Let's cheat and let's actually add some real defense.
You're gonna need to get the access codes to the vault to recover the item the hyena stole from Air Force One. Our hyena insider says whoever's posted in the old CEO's office will have a key card that should give you access to the vault.
Agent vital signs 0. Serious trauma detected.
Well, that
Agent
didn't work
vital
either.
signs 0.
Even trying to kill things quickly with a shield didn't really help. But I do have an idea. So it turns out the best defense isn't killing things quicker, and it isn't a shield. And in fact, it is offensive mitigation. And this is true for every single build. But with a 6 red core offensive build, these strategies are essential. And a 6 red core offensive build teaches you these principles very, very well, because this is the only reasonable thing that you have brought to the battle space in the way of your defense. And when you do that, what you're saying is that I can offensively mitigate, I can mitigate all damage to me, and by doing that I can keep my damage window intact. But with a weapon you have to expose yourself to do damage, so you're exposing yourself to the risk of taking damage every time you are doing damage. And your ability to offensively mitigate becomes reduced. And what happens is when you take damage, you very quickly move into an area that is both restricted in the amount of damage that you can do whilst taking damage, but more importantly, it puts you into a zone where now a margin of error exists that could result in your death. So you reduce the line of sight that the enemy has onto you, generally exposing yourself to only one target at a time. You stay at a range where you're still able to do maximum damage, but the further you are away from them, the less accurate they are, so there's an optimal distance that you're going to keep. You're going to move behind cover whenever you can. If you're out in the open, you're definitely going to move fast. And you want to remain unpredictable. The AI is actually programmed with predictability in mind. If you pop in and out of cover from exactly the same spot, the enemy knows that you're there. Makes sense. But if you move behind cover, out of sight of the enemy, and move away from the last point that you did damage, the enemy still thinks that you're in the last spot where they saw you do damage from, and they will continue to fire upon that spot. So even when you're reducing angles, you're at an optimal distance, you're unpredictable, exposing yourself at an absolute minimum, you're still taking damage because you are forced to expose yourself in some way to, at minimum, one enemy when you are dealing damage. So when you take damage, you are quickly approaching either restricted damage or an extremely limited damage period. And so in order to avoid that, most red builds will add a shield. And that will quite often, in most situations, solve their issues. So killing things microseconds quicker really has zero effect on your defense. It's offensive mitigation, which is going to be the biggest part, and then even a damage build, adding a shield is going to ensure duration of being able to do that damage. But a shield isn't the only way to ensure duration, and it also comes with some downsides.
You've got your objective. Don't let anything.
We've already spoken in the last video about the break point of the shield, but there is another disadvantage to the shield. Here in this legendary mission, I can't peek, and I'm going to take too much damage. Already half my armor's gone, so I need to use the shield. But now this guy, he runs to the left-hand side, which is one of the weaknesses of the shield, in that I can only peek with it on the right-hand side. So now, as I go to the left-hand side in order to kill that target, not all roses. Always appearing on the right-hand side of cover, essentially exactly where you just left cover in order to do damage, increases your predictability. And the enemy is constantly firing on that position because that's the last place they saw you. There is a sneaky little glitch that you can use in order to extend the duration of time that you're able to do damage. The shield glitch works where you are peeking but you're unable to see around the corner. And yet if I magically look through my scope, I'm now able to have sight onto a target without exposing myself. This extends the duration for which I'm able to do damage. But just remember, when you extend the duration of time that you have available to you to do damage, if you're not using fast hands, there's every chance that you are losing damage by not taking a sustained damage weapon. So the shield adds duration for us to be able to do damage, including the shield glitch. That definitely adds a lot of duration for us to be able to do damage. And that does that through damage mitigation. The relationship being that as you extend yourself away from any restricted damage period or limited damage period, you are now able to freely do damage for longer, which means that you can maximize all the damage that you possess. Well, let's have a look at some of the other ways in which you can mitigate damage. There are other ways to reduce the damage. You can reduce it by using a defender drone or a PFE. At 0 tier, the defender drone provides 20% damage reduction, depending on the mods you've got, and a tier 6 will provide you about 50%. but in real terms you are increasing or decreasing your margin of error by fractions of a second. But then you have divide. So you can divide the number of enemies that are focusing on you and thereby reducing the margin of error considerably. Less enemies firing on your position means less bursts are going to end up damaging you.
This is what I've been waiting for!
If we up the ante and go to a tier 6 decoy, its ability to divide damage actually becomes quite impressive.
You don't scare me! Game on!
The division of damage becomes incredibly in favor of the decoy over you.
Serious trauma detected.
You don't realise how much attention the decoy is taking away from you until it goes down. You can also achieve this division of damage by using other skills and at the same time doing damage. A striker drone will also draw attention away from you. Now, does anybody want to still say that offense is the best defense? Then you have crowd control, where you have the ability to reduce damage to 0, but only to those enemies that you have applied your status effect to. And not all status effects are created equal when it comes to damage reduction. The Disorient and the Blinder Firefly are both damage reduction crowd control. As you can see here, those that are affected by the status effect do 0 damage. But do not confuse damage reduction as being applicable to the phone. Although their movement speed is reduced to 0 and it's an offensive multiplier, they are still well capable of being able to do damage whilst stuck in foam. So that's duration. Duration extends the time available to you to do damage whilst taking damage. Once you take that NPC burst or those few bullets or whatever it may be, the amount of time available to you to do damage whilst taking damage is significantly reduced. And at some point, you're making that judgment call that you are within your margin of error. You either say, screw it, I'm going to take another couple of bullets and I'll see where this goes. But what you realize is that at some point, your ability to do damage has been reduced so badly that you need to do something about it. And that's where the next pillar of this game, or cornerstone of this game, comes in. This is frequency. The two reasons why you stop doing damage are: one, you've either run out of bullets and you need to reload in order to come back out and do damage, or you have suffered so much damage that you can't do damage any more effectively, and so you need to do something about it, and that thing requires you to replenish that armor in order to be able to extend that duration. So your defensive replenishment, if you leave the gates without any division tech on your side, then all that you have available to you is 4 armor kits at the beginning, or what a lot of people with high damage builds do is they are waiting for the end of the wave. So they clear that wave and then the game magically restores all of your health and all of your armor all at once. Now you can play with the directive, which offers no regeneration or no replenishment. But even then, there is a glitch where all you need to do is just simply change your weapon at the end, and magically, once again, everything is restored for you. But should you reach that decision point that's before the end of the wave, then you're going to need to use an armor kit. Now this represents a high danger period for any build. You have taken damage and you're in a vulnerable state, but for a damage build the only way of replenishing is using a medkit, and the only way of defending is by doing damage, and that damage requires you to be exposed. So you need to replenish your armor by using a medkit, which takes you out of the fight for at least 2 seconds just to change your armor. And then should you be interrupted during that process, either trying to save your life or otherwise, then you are still in a vulnerable state and you are still unable to do damage, which means you restart the process again and you are further taken out of the fight and reducing your damage. And this is where passive replenishment of your armor can add to your damage by keeping you in the fight for longer, or getting you back in the fight quicker. Now I've got armor on kill here in red because it is nowhere near it as effective at keeping you in the fight as what it makes it out to be. When you have heaps of time available to do damage and you haven't taken any damage, any kills that you get aren't going to give you any armor on kill because you're at full armor. And when you are extremely damaged, when you absolutely need that armor the most, you need a kill to get it. But the reason why you need it is because you're unable to do the damage required to get that kill. So armor on kill is great during this middle phase where it will keep you topped up and keep you away from that margin of error position, and that's what it's for, is to keep you out of that margin of error and restricted damage period. The Reviver Hive is also in red. It doesn't need too much explaining, but it is literally there because inside that margin of error you've made the error and you've failed to replenish your armor quickly enough in order to be able to get back in the fight. You are now on the ground and you are now out of the fight for a whole 10 seconds, meaning that your damage per second has been significantly reduced. But it will pop you up and it will regenerate some of your armor, but in all likelihood it's going to put you back in a very similar situation to what you were before when you made the error in the first place. And so the best methods of having frequent available damage are going to be armor regeneration and armor repair, which both can occur passively whilst you are doing damage. Now builds without any form of frequency, any sort of replenishment, is where I see the majority of damage build players get in trouble. And I've certainly made the mistake as well myself. Playing with a high damage build, or any build for that matter, you take damage and then you're pushing the envelope, and because you realise that even when I do take another burst that normally should have killed me, I'm actually saved by this tiny little sliver of health that the game allows me to keep and take a little bit more damage than what I actually should be able to. And so you start falling into this belief that you actually have the entire window of time available to you in which to do damage, which is fine for one use and one use only. Because what happens then is you replenish your armor with a med kit or whatever it may be, and you forget that you're still missing all of this health, which if you're using a damage build actually makes up about a quarter of all of your health pool. And what inevitably happens is you have become accustomed to taking a certain amount of damage and still being able to do damage, but what in reality your window of time available to you to do that whilst taking damage very quickly falls into a margin of error because you are still missing all of that health. And what you thought was available for you to do damage whilst taking damage is in fact not, and you've lost the protection of that mechanism for a period of time after it actually occurs, and now this results in your death when you make that error. And sometimes it's the first time.
Vital signs critical. Vital signs critical.
Now there's been regen build videos made, and this one, which is completely all blue, all regen, all singing and dancing as far as regeneration is concerned. The problem is that you have to invest so heavily into regeneration that you end up being a pea shooter. This build with a Scorpio, an extremely high damage weapon at close range, at 100% accuracy, with a 15% amplified opportunistic bonus applied, and the 20% additional amplified damage that the Scorpio debuff qualities, and this build still cannot take down an elite within one magazine. So we change the build up, keep our regen as close as possible, we add some crit chance, and we go back to the drawing board, and then we see where we're at, and still, without those debuffs, it's even further away from being able to take down an elite. Let's try the Scorpio. We now don't have opportunistic because we've opted for the memento, so that would add some damage once we pick up those tokens, but still we're only just able to take down an elite with those tokens. And what did we exchange all that damage for? What appears to be a very slow growth in armor. Now this build at the moment has 3%, so it's 72,000 in armor. That includes the small amount that is on the build attributes as well. But when we get the memento stacks, that doubles. And that 72,000 turns into nearly 150,000, and I've now gone and got those full 30 stacks for a full 3%, and what you can see here is that the armor regen still shows as being only 72,000, but with full stacks, now what you can see is that we're getting double the rate of growth. And now a full almost 2 million in armor is regenerated in a little under 14 seconds. But a build's effectiveness is based on all three pillars. At this point in time, our damage is exceptionally low. The bubble doesn't even extend to an elite, and that requires us to be at close range with buffs. But as we pick up tokens, we will pick up some damage. But our frequency, again, it's still quite low. It's more than many other builds in that it is regenerating 150,000 per second at its peak. Now that's only 2 bullets. Now that's not enough to stand there and take damage. But where this build gets its further propping from is in its duration. A shield, tier 6, although it doesn't have anything to regenerate it other than its active regeneration, that will provide a considerable amount of time for the passive frequency and regeneration to take effect. We're also picking up memento stacks, giving us bonus armor, and while enemies are trying to chew up bonus armor, that regen is also still having more time to take effect. We also have the Scorpio with an inbuilt crowd control mechanism. So as long as I'm landing shots on at least one person, that's one less individual or NPC that's going to be able to do damage on me, further extending the duration. So although it's quite low on damage, it has some frequency and it has a lot of duration. And when all three of those combine, will it be the most effective build? No. But will it be effective? Let's see.
CEO's office will have a key card that should give you access to the vault.
Rogue agent detected. Rogue striker drone detected. Hostile striker drone detected. Eliminated.
So could you use this build? Yes. Would I? Fuck no. It's just nowhere near balanced enough. The damage, like in order for me to be able to kill anything, I need to be right in its face. I need to have memento stacks, and it still takes me all day. That's not what I consider to be fun. Although I don't think anybody is going to argue that when it came to confronting those first enemies in the first wave, it did considerably better at being able to deal with them than what the glass cannon vigilance build did. Did it do it quicker? I don't know. I'm not going to go back and count. But balance is the key. But in the next video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to push frequency to its limits. I'm going to come up with a build that is based solely on getting you back in the fight as quickly as possible. And to demonstrate the power of frequency, What that means is I'm going to use nothing in the way of duration. So that means no memento, no armor regen, no bonus armor, no shield, no crowd control, nothing but the power of frequently available damage. If you like, then like. If you're looking forward to getting your freak on, I will see you in the next one. Log out.